Yeah, greetings once again, comrades. We are actually going on with our conversation about society and ideology. We have come across instruments of the society, especially instrument of coercion, and we have been here for a time now, and we look forward to continue this conversation. So permit me once again to recognize the presence and appreciate the presence of everyone from Brother Usu, Zaki, Brother Coco, Sister Myra, Sister Tapua, Sister Portia, and Sir Windhoek, and Elder Sam Mochao. Feel most welcome to our class today. As usual, let's start the reading and let me know who is willing to read for us the two paragraphs that are timed, then we can share our conversation or our thinking on this. Feel most welcome. Anybody willing to read for us, please go ahead.
And yet, a society must count among its instruments of coercion and cohesion, prohibitions and permissions, which are made explicit in a statutory way. In many societies, there is, in addition, a whole gamut of instruments which are at once subtle and insidious. The sermon in the pulpit, the pressures of trade unionism, the opprobrium inflicted by the press, the ridicule of friends, the ostracism of colleagues, the sneer, the snub, and countless other devices. These are all non-statutory instruments by means of which societies exert coercion, by means of which they achieve and preserve unity. Coercion could, unfortunately, be rather painful, but it is singly effective in assuring that individual behavior does not become dangerously irresponsible. The individual is not an archaic unit. He lives in orderly surroundings, and the achieving of these orderly surroundings calls for methods both explicit and subtle.
Thank you, Sister Portia. Let me read it again. Uh, uh, also slowly, as also Sister Portia will be able to digest the reading again, and all members to do the same. As I'm reading this time around, please note some of the words that you might want us to start looking at first, and also try to form your thoughts around this. I know I had shared this before. So it says that, and yet, and that means that we need to tie a bit the last sentence of the last paragraph, which said that, last paragraph said that, but when a society develops an unwieldy bureaucracy, it has allowed this fear of the arbitrary to become pathological, and it is itself autocratic. And then it goes to say now the new paragraph that, and yet a society must count among its instruments of coercion and cohesion, prohibition and permission, which are made explicit in any statutory way. Now, in many societies, there is, in addition, a whole gamut of instruments which are at once subtle and insidious. For example, the sermon in the pulpit, the pressures of trade unions, the opprobrium inflicted by the press, the ridicule of friends, the ostracism of colleagues, the sneer, the snub, and countless other devices. These are all non-statutory instruments by means of which society exerts coercion, by means of which they achieve and preserve unity. Now, coercion will unfortunately be rather painful, but it is signally effective in ensuring that individual behavior does not become dangerous and irresponsible. Now, the individual is not an anarchic unit. He lives in orderly surroundings, and the achieving of these orderly surroundings call for methods that are both explicit and subtle. That's our reading. Once again, anybody who might identify some of the terms that might need explanation, and anybody who might wish and maybe go ahead and explain them for us, you are most welcome. Let's start by any terms that you may need explanation on. Raise your hand or unmute yourself and say the word. Any word? Window, are you around?
Hey, Brother Pigeon.
Yeah, you always bring to our attention some of the words. So please highlight some for us. That we might speak the meaning.
Pass for now.
Thank you. Anybody? I don't understand the word gamut. Who understands that? G-M-U-T. Anybody who can explain that word?
Yes, an extensive group of something.
A whole group of.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
A
so
whole
a whole
set
group,
of.
or a whole set of instruments.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you. How about this word opprobrium? The opprobrium inflicted.
It's when you show someone or something up in order to have them disgraced.
Be an
Like when
equivalent.
newspapers
A synonym?
write some articles about someone to put pressure on them to show them up to the public that they're no good.
Could you have any other synonym for it that might be easier?
I thought disgrace would be one.
So there's a lot of trying to shame somebody.
Yes.
Okay. So it's like the shame inflicted or the disgrace inflicted in a way.
Yes. By the press, yes.
Okay. Thank you for that. Now, I think I'm okay on my word. Unless somebody want to raise another word. Anybody? Anybody with any other word? Okay. Then the room is okay. So let's start sharing our thoughts. All want to go first. before I go to the list? Anybody will want to? Anybody who is filled by the Spirit? They say you are filled by the Holy Spirit. Yeah, you are filled by I don't know which spirit, but anybody who has that spirit to start us off, please go ahead. So the Holy Spirit is not hovering around. Okay, let's make it work. We're going through our list as usual. Sister Tapua, your mic is still on. Maybe the Spirit is speaking.
Oh, I was just about to say, if Sister Portia could kindly start us off, because she's very good at pointing out meanings of sentences, sentence by sentence, whilst we try to make our minds up.
Oh, okay. Sister Portia is landing on you. Are you ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Thank you, Queen Sister Tapua. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you very much. Thank you.
Okay.
Please, sister, go ahead.
Thank you so much. And many greetings all. All right, there are two paragraphs. In the first paragraph, the first sentence is saying society functions through instruments, and those instruments are based in the law. The second sentence is those instruments are focused on, as mentioned in the first sentence, to coerce, to cohese, to prohibit, or permit. And so the second sentence is saying those instruments are not obvious, and sometimes they can proceed in a not obvious way to detrimental effects, so harmful effects. And then the third sentence, this is the non-way, this is the non-law, so not in law. You can see these instruments also being used through sermons, the pressure when you're in when there's like a trade union saying they need to have better pay. I know like in Kenya, the women who have went over to Saudi Arabia and they have been having their human rights violated allegedly. Now that comes back to the government of Kenya through not the trade union, but there's another union to have pressure to have better rights for workers abroad. So it can come through that. It can also be, as Queen Sister Tapua said, an article in the press that disgraces someone. It can be in the workplace, a sneer or snub of a coworker who might be having an extramarital affair, and now it has come out. And so those are not bound in law. Still, the societies will exert this pressure on the person or persons to maintain unity. And then in the second paragraph, the first sentence is saying that coercion can be painful to ensure that that person is responsible to society, so keeps the unity. And then the second sentence reiterates that the person is equal to society. So the person is not equal to the person, it's equal to the society. And then the third sentence says that person is of society, and that's an order. And by staying within such an order, that order is maintained by those instruments that were mentioned in the first and second sentence of the first paragraph. And so the question that I have now, this is my opinion, my thinking, or my perspective, is I kept talking about attention and methodology. And I said previously, in an oppressive systems, whatever methodology needs to be done, so long as that's done to keep the intention, which is keeping the oppressive system going, it will be done. And so I would ask Prof. Nkrumah, how is in this current society, even when he was living, is that the idea of societies we want for unity? So is the oppressive systems, are those the go-to for unity? I yield.
Thank you, Sister Portia. Nkrumah might not be with us, but we have Elder Sam with us. Elder Sam is not Nkrumah, but he will be able to share with us also some wisdom on this. Elder Sam, please share with us your thoughts on this. And you can be able to share with us your wisdom on what Sister Portia is asking. Elder Sam?
What is the question of our sister? Good evening, everybody.
Good evening, Elder.
Good evening, Elder. So, Prof. Nkrumah, and there's another word that King Brother Coco uses, like when they call Madiba. It's a similar term that they call Professor Nkrumah. So the question I would have for Prof is, when he was writing this, he's saying that societies are trying to achieve a unity. So is it possible to have unity in oppressive systems?
Okay, if I have to make my contribution, I think the way our sister has explained, I think I concur with her. And the only thing I'm emphasizing here is, you know, even in these societies, you know, where it goes, these are the two lines. It is the laws that are statutory, that are in law, and they are laws that are derived by society as it grows and grows and discover from time to time. Remember, we agreed initially that there's nothing that is static. So as society grows, as you know, when I grew up in South Africa, the issue that we now today grapple with, and we have to make laws in order that society must be in harmonious state, like the LGBTQ. When we grew up, there was nothing like that. We never even knew or even seen this. And today, because society develops, society discovers things that are troubling society, and society develops systems. And that is why today we have countries that come up with laws to make sure that people with disability, people with these queer other methods of life are accommodated in society. So as our sister's question in particular, I don't think there could be a unity where there is coercive, especially if it is coercive that is extreme. You know, a coerciveness that makes everybody, that accommodates everybody, that is not extreme. And that is why in the previous chapter last week, we said if it goes overboard, then it becomes autocratic, and then it becomes not suitable for society. So everything needs to be measured. If you are coercion, if coercion is extreme, then it becomes anarchy, where people do as they wish, laissez-faire. So everything needs to be measured. Everything must be complied or no, agreed to by society. If the majority of the people agree to that, then it is entrapped. And that is why they develop sometimes those things that were not there previously. You know, in the previous societies, we didn't have seat belts in motor vehicles. And now motor vehicles are fitted, and then there is a law that says you cannot drive without a seat belt. So all these things goes also as society develops. Thanks.
Thank you, Elder Sam. And hope you are done with sharing your thoughts, Elder Sam, on the text. Or would you like to share anything on the text, please?
Sorry?
Would you like to share any further thoughts on the text from your own thoughts? Elder Sam, I can't hear you.
I said no, Brother Pigeon.
Okay. Thank you. Now, Sister Tapua, I'll go to you and then I'll come to Brother Coco. Sister Tapua, maybe you might be coming in to respond to something, but also feel free to share your thoughts on the text as well.
Okay, thank you very much. I'd like to give current examples of how coercive laws are put in place that could sound fair and reasonable, but other forms of pressure are exerted on people in order to make them comply. The example that I have in mind is in Zimbabwe, for example, reporters are supposed to be able to report fairly and follow rules on what they're reporting on. Opposition parties in Zimbabwe are allowed to exist, but they get harassed. In other words, they're taken to court, they're thrown behind bars for a while, they're refused bailout, and then after 6 months or 8 months, they're told charges were dropped. In other words, the system wears you down by using other means that are not within the law when they definitely know that it's not within the law and it's not permissible and it's not going to stand any ground in court. That is used. And then secondly, in our rural setting, because our government provides people with seeds and agricultural packages and so on. What they then do is, the law says it's got to be redistributed fairly, but people are skipped and not offered any if they are not known to be the ruling party members. So that's the second one, where you've got the law says one thing, but execution and neighbors and everybody else who might think you either are pro-LGBT or you are a member of the opposition party, you are excluded from the benefit that you're supposed to have in society. And then when we're saying coercion and cohesion, sometimes, especially with dictators, because they're controlling the system to such an extent that people have lost their voice, it appears to them as if there is cohesion. People are united. They're only united in as far as they have been muzzled and they can't say anything because they're afraid of, particularly the second part, where sermons will be on the pulpit to pressurize you. Political parties are used, radios are used, and the erstwhile boogeymen that I've found in post-colonial systems in Africa is, but I'll give Zimbabwe as my example. Any Zimbabwean is free to be a party, any party member, any political party. But that is sneered at. And particularly during election time, the sentence, whites will come back if you do this. You're selling out if you hold a different thought. So you have, people are allowed to vote, but there are other means that are used to terrify them to not do as they want to, because the people in power have interests. I'll stop there for now. So that's my illustration of the contrast between what's in law and other means that are used to control people, and then the perceived cohesion that results for those, because you see I mean, there's a lot of simmering in the background where you definitely know that the ordinary person doesn't want this leader anymore, but they can't do anything about it. Or they won't be allowed to do anything about it. I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Brother Coco?
Greetings, comrades. Do you hear me?
Yes, brother, we can hear
Yes.
you. Greetings.
Thank you. I don't know if I will be able to answer Sister Portia's question, but I'll try. If you know Ghana's history or of Dr. Nkrumah's history, you will know that he implemented a preventive act, which he was using to stop people before they could do crime, in short. And according to what we know, they say the prisons were overflowing with those who were seen as opponents of Dr. Nkrumah. And in the end, he was seen as a dictator, which upon his toppling, lots of people came out to the streets to celebrate. But now when they look back, they are missing him. They are missing him. So to answer your question, Sister Portia, we need to distinguish between coercion for cohesion and tyranny. They are two different things. What he's trying to advocate here is for constructive coercion, all right, not a tyrannical force which is used to suppress or dominate the people. The reason why he came up with these methods is that he realized that Africa has that triple heritage, which means there are different ways of seeing things, and to achieve unity, something had to happen, and we couldn't leave everything to chance, or as he says in some of his book, when society is in transition, the ideals of the new society cannot be left simply to persuasion, for the agents of the old society do not rely on persuasion alone. So in this case, I refer you to what he was doing according to what we read from White Malice, where he established the Africa Bureau, because he realized that the Western societies were continuing to brainwash the Africans. So it was a war of information at that time, with Radio France International, as I said before in one of the previous lectures, BBC and Voice of America were distributing or sharing information which was then being used to actually keep the Africans where they were or imprisoned in their colonial mindset. But what he was trying to do was to bring together the different identities which the Africans have, the traditional African value, Islamic influence, and the Western Christian and colonial thought, which all of Africa will say we have that heritage. So that could be seen as contradictory to what he stands for. But he is more of trying to unite this Africa, trying to bring Africa together, fuse all of these differences in heritages. But at the same time, let's not forget, he advocates for scientific socialism. And this is in a society where capitalism was seen as a la mode, the in thing, the biggest thing since sliced bread. And he faced opposition from the Western imperialists who wanted to maintain Africa within the grasp of neo-colonialism. So as a result, he realized something had to happen. We cannot just leave things to chance or persuasion, as he said there in the thing I have read. He refers a lot to communalism or African humanism, because we, the way we are, we live as a community, we cry as a community, we jubilate as a community. There is that community cohesion already, which comes from morality. But morality on its own is not enough at times. Morality is more of guiding the personal behavior, how we as people behave. But when it comes to guiding society towards a common goal, especially such as unity, he advocates for things such as coercion. So in the previous lecture which we read, he said coercion is in intent cohesion, in that he accepts that, yes, at times you have to revert to that, or you have to use such measures in order to keep the society together, because he realized that no matter what he did, no matter what he tried to persuade the people, it was not going to be possible, especially with the enemies who were about and using all of the powerful resources that they had, that they continue to use up to today. Because as we are speaking here, there are 5 African leaders who went to see the Emperor Trump in the White House, who had to go there and pay tribute. And what he is doing there, he's using coercion. It's not coercion this time in terms of sanctions, but he's using tariffs. They are going there hoping they can persuade him to reduce the tariffs which he has in their countries. And in a way, we are not ruled in Africa. We are ruled in the White House. It's the same case with Lesotho right now. Lesotho has declared a state of emergency because we depend a lot on the manufacturing of jeans that go to the United States. But the United States has put under Trump has put up tariffs to around 38%. Initially, it was 50% for Lesotho. And AGOA, I think, is coming to an end. So as a result of that, Lesotho government decided to offer Elon Musk a license to operate Skylink in Lesotho, which South Africa had denied because South Africa wanted a share in that company. But Lesotho decided, yes, is Trump's mate. If Trump wants him to get this contract, we'll give him the contract. Hopefully things will work for him. So as you can see, there is again a coercion. It's happening, and it's happening insidiously. We cannot see it happening as the people in Lesotho. Some know it's happening, but some don't know it's happening. So there is an element here of silent assassins happening around. And you also see it a lot when it comes to propaganda. So I talked about propaganda of the BBC, Voice of America, and RFI. Propaganda is there in the United States itself. So the people of the United States do not know what's happening outside the United States. For them, the United States is the world. And that's why Donald Trump doesn't even know that Liberia was established by the free people from the United States. So they speak English as an official language. And he praised one of the leaders there on how he speaks English well. So it's there. It's part of the cohesion. The cohesion has created a society which doesn't know where it stands or doesn't really understand what's happening. And I think I've seen like that again in South Africa, where most of the South Africans didn't know what was happening on the continent in Africa. So let me stop here.
Thank you so much, Brother Coco. And I think you have raised a bit on the maybe Nkrumah's leadership and the material condition during his time that might have informed his choice of such thoughts. But let's hear what also has to say, having come from Nkrumah's territory. Also, please come in, brother.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Well, Brother Coco said something which the, 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 let me put it this way: collective coercion. And it's not the first time I heard it. I think years back, quite far, about let's say 19 years ago, here at the university, there was an author who wrote about the social pressure, which it's more or less a force which compels everybody to comply. And that is good because it helps to shape us in a particular direction, which we all agree that it's good. What we find happening in our world today, for me, I call it experimental world of the European creation, which started in the 19th century. And of course, just today I was searching for a reference for something I've written, and I came across was it what Terence Terence something. I will get the name back to you. And this guy wrote 2012 on the European creating an African tradition, but then the African tradition came from an European template of experimenting a kind of system which they themselves they were fragmented. Europe was far behind because let's say that they are like a children to us. Africa is the oldest in all, you see. But because of their might in terms of arms, they were able to conquer us. And not that because of their arms. Africa, we betrayed ourselves. Now, what has happened is that they've got control of us. They have imposed a template, experimental template, which is not something, which is something that Nkrumah talked about, that Europe has exported its problem to Africa. And he warned of the consequences. You see, so for me, I feel that we shouldn't just entertain democracy as if it is some sacrosanct thing. But then the point is, how do we actually come with something from our side? Because we look at China, Mao Zedong look at the Soviet communism, saw that it has got some value. But then how would it work within the Chinese system? In fact, they were able to turn it upside down in the Chinese system, whereby instead of top down, it became bottom up communism. And it has done very well, far exceedingly than the Russian top down communism. So, Africa, what our problem is that we just work on templates. We are not innovative. We don't look at our concept to say that what would work perfectly, even if we apply this concept within our system. What are the problems that will come? How is it culturally fitting within our system? Because we have traditional systems already there. And now they work as a parallel institutions, which is itself a problem. Uh-huh. And then you have something like Eswatini and Lesotho, which also have called this dominant kinship system in place. But even if we look at Eswatini, Eswatini too has complicated itself using a British model, not an African model. For me, that is how I describe the Eswatini system. So I think the best thing that can happen to Africa is for our scholars, our professors, you see, in the governance side, to actually be able to say that, look, for us to move forward, we cannot stick to the old, this laissez-faire democracy, which also makes everything go bad. Because then we have no authority, we have no order, we have no controls. You do what you like, and that is called democracy. We know what is happening in our country, which was not the same in some years back. Everything is haywire. So I feel that we need to um, sit down And if we are looking at Nkrumah and why Nkrumah, with all that what he was as an intellectual, would apply force at a point in time, because he saw that we have inculcated the errors of the West. And the only way to actually whip a child that is going wayward is to spank the child a bit. You see, so I don't think he was wrong to actually imprison some people in order to have control to put things right. And as Brother Coco said, if Ghanaians will miss Nkrumah today, it means that what he was doing that time, which was misunderstood, was actually right. Thank you. Wow. Am I lost? Hello.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Osu. Sister Myra? Sister Myra? Hello? Can Sister Myra hear me? If no, we can get to Sawindok.
King Brother Pigeon, Sister Myra put in the chat, that she's listening.
Okay, let's get to Sawindok. Sawindok, can you hear me, Sawindok? Let's get to Geranunaki. Geranunaki. Can anyone hear me? Because I'm now suspecting either I'm not audible enough.
No, I
Because
hear
of
you
course,
loud
Lina-
and clear.
No, I can hear.
Hear you very well.
We can hear you.
Okay, so I've called for Sawindok. I've called for Geranunaki. Geranunaki, are you able to go ahead?
No, my brother, I have nothing, my friend.
Okay, but I'll put, for example, Geranunaki, I'll bring some example on this context of this question, and I want to put it in the Sahel region, for example. The society we have now in the Sahel region. For example, let's talk about Traore and the government of Burkina Faso. Amongst other, we talk about Mali and Guita. And if you talk about this, what do you think, can you say about that society? On the coercion and cohesion thing, what do you want to say about it? Does it actually have any relevance, or can you link it to some of the happenings in government of Traore now? Jananunaki?
Yes, give thanks, my brother. What I can say, my brother, is that one of AES is more of, for lack of a better term, organic, in a sense that it is the will of the people that is wanting that to take place there, because they're tired of the mistreatment they've been receiving. So I can say that coercion is basically, yeah, it is painful in a sense that, but it is painful in a positive way, if I can say, because the people losing their loved ones due to the poverty and the circumstances they had. But when the French people are taken out and the resources taken their own, now they started building things. I think, yeah, it was worth it to go through that period, because now things are starting to go good. And might remind you that there's some people who have money, who have business in Burkina Faso. For an example, Burkina Faso, they have money there. But when the market is closed for them, they go to sleep outside the house of Traore to what, to make sure anyone who wants to kill him must them there outside of his house. So that is the result of that coercion that I say. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's get to Sokiri. And welcome, Brother Ifo. We are actually sharing our thoughts in regard to the elected text here.
Sorry, that was broken up. Could you say that again?
I'm saying welcome, Brother Ifo. We are sharing our thoughts on the elected text, as we usually do for our class. So we read and we ask you to, what do you think about this text? Or what do you understand out of it? And what then you're thinking out of the text? So you take some time a bit. Now you've joined us, maybe to continue reading the text and try to digest it. Then you'll be able to share that's what you think about it. Let me get to Brother Sokiri. Sokiri, can you share something with us? Or is left again? Sokiri.
Well, I have just joined you and I still have little about the discussion.
Okay, thank you. So let me take this conversation a bit further. I haven't shared my thought. Sister Myra is not able to share her thought. And Brother Chuka is also not able to share his thought. He's listening. I'm not sure of Sir Window because he hasn't confirmed. I think he has confirmed or not. So let me share my thoughts before I take it back to now ask sharing our general thoughts on this. Maybe come back or rebuttal or something like that. But permit me first of all to share my thoughts on this. Oh, Sister Tapua, do you want to go on? You will allow me to go
it's
ahead.
okay.
Okay. Thank
Yes, you can go ahead, my brother. You can go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So some of the few things I'll be raising at this particular moment might be other questions for further discussion. But let me know, brother. Okay, it's okay. Now, one, I want to focus on the first sentence. The society must count among its instruments of coercion and cohesion, prohibition, and permission, which are made explicit in a statutory way. I want to comment on that. What is the difference when it comes to prohibition and permission? When I'm made in statutory way, I consider statutory way being more of like made in law, made legal, what they call legal, or made in the constitution. And in this context, sometimes they talk about what is prohibition, which means what are the don'ts, what must not be done, and what must be done. And that makes something very funny, or brings some element of how do we then perceive coercion in this context and cohesion. Does it mean that prohibitions are the coercion and permissions are the cohesion? Or does it mean that coercion can be both prohibition and permission? So you are trying to direct people to a certain aspect. Basically, by coercing people to behave in a uniform way, you're trying to create uniformity, which then brings the cohesion. Now, I'll take, for example, in the constitutions of so many countries, they say that it is illegal to kill. Whether it's manslaughter, whether you call it murderer or murder, anything you want to call it. Most of the law says it's illegal. So that is a prohibition. And what happens that they are then put in place to ensure that people don't kill? Or what happens when somebody actually goes contrary to that prohibition? Most of the time, you find that the punishment is very harsh, which may be called very painful, as you describe in the second paragraph. But what is the intention? The intention is to create harmony among cohesion in the society so that nobody goes extra mile. So nobody creates any disorder, or nobody feel free to kill any person in a society until they follow what is prohibited. So we know that as a society, you must come up with the do's and the don'ts. The society must agree on what should not be done and what must be done. Now, how we ensure that that is attained can be sometimes very painful, or sometimes can just be mental. I'll take example of the independence of most of African countries. Some went violent. Some went peaceful a bit. But in both ways, they were putting pressure, as now being stated in the second sentence, that in many societies, there's in addition a whole gamut of instruments, which are at once subtle or insidious. So it means that some of the prohibitions of permission can either be subtle, some can be insidious. But the intention of those is to bring cohesion in a society. Other society, like if you look at the Islamic society, people are being stoned to death or something like that, so that they deter people from doing that. Look at other countries where you get that people commit corruption offenses are hanged. That process might not be cool enough, but the intention is to bring some uniformity. Now the question then begs is, can human being or can people or a society live without rules? And by saying that can society live without rules, doesn't mean that the rules must be written explicitly. Some can be silent rules, silent traditions. It's very clear that society cannot live without those rules. And as we had read previously, that the no society is perfect, and therefore society keeps on moving and improving. And that's what Elder Sam was saying, that some practices were not available back then, or even if they were being practiced, they were not of serious magnitude as they come today. Take critical examples. For example, now there's a permission, the use of AI as a new technology coming up. In Kenya, some youth used it during the protest to show the president being in a coffin. Some actions that were actually seen not right. And it went again what the government said, Data Protection Act, or the freedom of expression. How do you balance that? If you allow people to be free enough to say that we can put somebody anywhere, we can put anything, like now in Traore thing, you can say that you can allow anybody to abuse the president, anybody to go where they want or plot against the president. How do you ensure that this is not happening? So these are proactive measures that the society put in place. I resonate a lot with the text that says there's someone in the pulpit. For example, in the country today, when you're facing this dictatorship of President Ruto, some church leaders have come out very violently to help speak on this. When he was collecting more tax, the churches equate him to tax collector Zakayo, or the church in the Bible. They say that he is coming in to collect taxes. And people are asking that please come down as the Zacchaeus or whatever came from the down to face Jesus and said that he's going to return whatever he has taken from the people. The sermons are being used in the church clearly to put the despot, or here in this case, dictators, in place. But the same dictators also use sometimes the same sermon to say that they're God chosen, like what President Ruto today said, that is just not chosen from God. He happened to be an ordinary person who just got God anointment to be the leader. So same sermon can be used either to pacify or even to bring order in the society. The trade unions sometimes agitate and they push for some of the demands in a society, for example. And those demands sometimes lead for improvement in a society. But again, how about the process? Is the process to get those views listened to? For example, if you put pressure of trade union and equate it to the Gen Z that are going on in this country, the young people are protesting every day in the street. They're trying to be sometimes violent, but trying to use some means to pass a message. Some people might see that process of agitation to be more of violence, creating division, while some think that it might be also cohesive, some uniformity or some responsibility from the government. So at what time do you categorize something evil or something right? And then we talk of the press, and you see the rest of the press. In Kenya, I will tell you, press has played a very big role as well. There are people who are actually friends of the president who ridicule him. In fact, they are going back in some of the speeches he gave some 5 years ago and what he's doing today contrary. They're trying just to shame and try to ensure that he goes back to line. You don't move away, you turn to the line of the society and what the society needs you to do. So these are countless things that I'm getting here. And what I'm also interested is that there is non-statutory instruments, which are these, but there are also statutory instruments. So the most important thing is the end of that paragraph. I said that by of which they achieve a passive or preserve unity. So you must see all these processes, whether you think they are positive or negative, they are geared towards some unity. And lastly, in that paragraph, they just leave the process. The process might be painful, like what the Kenyans are going through, or sometimes it might just be peaceful. At the end of the day, at what time do we distinguish the process and the goal? If the goal is unity, then how do we block the process and start discussing at what process? I know Malcolm X says by all means necessary. Permit me to pause there a bit. Sister Tapua?
Thank you very much. I've been trying to think about the word unity. To what extent can we say a society has unity? If we know that there are always two sides to something, dialectics. In other words, for society to progress, you cannot have unitary one thought. There's got to be differences. And it is that differences in perspective when we're trying to come together that moves anything forward. So,
Sister Tapua,
yes.
on that note,
Mhm.
what do you think about when, for example, the government of South Africa, when they say that they are forming a government of grand national unity? And you raise very important thing that, of course, because of dialectic, and I think Nkrumah proposed somewhere in the future that we cannot achieve an absolute positive action. What we tend to do is to ensure that we reduce negative action and increase positive action. So where positive action supersedes negative action, there's progression in that society. Where there's more negative vibration than the positive vibration, then there's actually retrogression in that society. So yes, now bearing that in mind and the example you're giving, how do you see then the situation of grand national unity in South Africa? Is there any perceived unity that can come out, or is it lack of an awareness that there might not be absolute unity? And how do we treat those counter opinions? Do we treat them more evil, or do we accept that actually we can never move together in the same direction?
I think that your last statement there nails it. It's moving together in the same direction. In other words, within the group of people who intend to move in a particular direction, there are going to be differences. And it is these differences that move whatever it is, the organization, the society forward. If you ally with someone who's retrogressive, whilst you're progressive, you're definitely going to stagnate because there is going to be conflict because each one of you is trying to convince the other to move one way or the other. You now have a difference between, just an example, different Pan-Africanist organizations that have different perspectives on how to achieve the ultimate. We can work together within our differences to complement each other and move forward. In other words, we're not going to say we're not going to move forward with Pan-Africanists, therefore we're going to ally with neo-colonialists. I mean, that doesn't make sense. And for me, that's the South African case, where, for example, it was not for me to judge, but this is my opinion. I was really disappointed when Zuma decided to split from the EFF and fragment opposition, because I thought they had more hope, because they seemed to want to go in the same direction. But for me, it was a case of leadership. Who wants to be in charge? And people were sacrificing the goal for leadership, just like Nkrumah suffered the same situation with other African leaders. Other African leaders couldn't hear what he was saying because they were more worried about their own positions in their own countries, and they wanted to be the leader. So if, for example, we look at the unity in South Africa as having been attained, the unitary government, I mean, as having attained the position of governance because Ramaphosa wants to be a leader, and he was seeing a threat in the person that he was supposed to be going the same direction with, Malema and possibly Zuma, then we've got a problem. And I'm not grouping these three only because of color or race. I'm just saying, from my perspective, they seemed to have had a better chance of using the differences that they have to move the country forward, instead of allying with the people that you're not in the same direction. In other words, they're getting swallowed. So that's what I meant when I said we need to be aware of dialectics, that there's got to be differences, but it's differences with people who are going in the same direction as you are. I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you. Elder Sam?
Yeah, brother Pigeon and members on the platform. I wanted, you see, Sister Tapua has already come in, but initially he asked some questions, and I think we went on not checking whether she got answers from her question. But I'm going to try to make an input covering what I thought I heard from her and the last parts that you people brought about South Africa. In her initial position, he was asking us and giving us the case of Zimbabwe in particular, that there's the constitution, there's the freedom to belong to whatever party you want, you can do all. So all the instruments are in place. But I think I want to answer her in the sense that to say, we should remember that initially they said in this ideology, there will always be a dominant ideology, and that dominant ideology will decide the direction of that society. But as we say, even now in the last input, that there will always be that struggle. It is not the whole society that is going to say part of this ideology and they are all agreeable to that. There will always be people who are not for that. And as we have learned, they mean people from the other side so that the change can come. Now what I want to say about this whole matter, we have also been told that everything that is happening in this realm of leadership and it can only survive if it is for the betterment of the people. So apart from being in the constitution, that constitution must be adopted by the whole nation. If there's a portion of the nation that is not happy about that constitution, the struggle will ensue. And that is why it becomes something that is binding and people follow it because the constitution was discussed. And that's why they make these, what they call people-to-people contacts. People must share into this discussion of whatever thing that is being tabled. Any law that comes into If it does not have those buy-in by the people, it will be rejected. And sometimes governments take shortcuts, like when you had your I'm not sure what was it that caused the students to go against the country in Kenya. I think there was something economic that the government came with, and they wanted to directly implement it. Sometimes people react immediately, but sometimes it's only in the practice of that law that people discover that, no, this was wrong. And then people start to agitate against that. But the essence is that we agreed to be in our statute must serve us, must make us progressive, not retrogressive. And that binding thing must bind all of us. Now I'm going to Sister Tapua. That constitution says nobody must be harassed. But the ruling party, they will always go overboard, but it is against the law. So they are getting away with the wrong things. But as history will always tell us, anything that is wrong will not last. It will end up being overthrown and changed. You can take the Ian Smith regime. They thought they will be there forever, but because the contradictions will always sharpen, they will. So even in Zimbabwe, what is going on, it is the same thing that is happening in South Africa. Everybody said, hooray, Mandela, we are free. But we are now realizing, no, that was not freedom. And that is why it explains why they cannot go with EFF, they could not go with Zuma, and they prefer to go with DA, which they said those are our erstwhile enemies, because they were never for the total liberation of the African people as the African National Congress. And therefore, the contradictions are sharpening in South Africa. You can see the turmoil that is going on currently, and slowly the African National Congress, which is 40% in the last general election, people are now saying in 2027, they will be totally out of government, because all what they are doing is not serving the people, is not improving the livelihood of the people. South Africa is a completely unequal society, and majority of the African people are bearing the brunt. So the ANC will not last. Thanks.
Thank you. Sister Portia?
Thank you so much. I just want to really say thank you to the Elder Sam and how he has addressed each of the points made. And then I want to thank King Brother Coco for his comments, the clarification about how coercion is for cohesion. And so in that regard, it's not oppressive. And then, of course, always many thanks to Queen Sister Tapua and you, King Brother Pigeon. So the comment that I had wanted to raise, and after people were discussing, is it goes into what is in the chat, and it is from it's from Elder Bernie, and Elder Bernie is reminding us that Africa, or Akibulan, was civilized. It had its own civilizations. And unfortunately, with imperialism, racial capitalism, MAFA, we as Akibulanese, by and large, have forgotten that we have had and we have civilizations. So then by default, and I would dare argue in a case of mirroring, which is not healthy in this point, we are mirroring racial capitalism because it appears or seems to meet our current needs. So if I have billions of dollars, even if I was getting those billions of United States dollars in harmful ways, no matter, because with those billions of United States dollars, I can now have access to everything in a racial capitalism system. regardless if it is morally healthy for the community. And by morally, I'm talking about sustainable for the community. So back to the elder's point of how he is reminding us, which I continue to say, we return to our civilizations, which I think goes back to King Brother Coco's point, coercion for cohesion. So in that sense, it is not harmful because it's sustaining our communities. And then the next point I'll say briefly is I'm always questioning this idea that we as Akibalanese have to be unified in one way. And the reason why I question that, because I think it comes from that racial capitalism, imperialism system, or one way or the highway. And that is not of our civilizations. It wasn't a one way or the highway. That is why we could, for example, see gods in trees or in mud, because we were not trying to be only one way. So I just want to keep emphasizing returning to our African civilizations, because we knew a lot, and also resisting one way or the highway ideology that is very much about oppression. And then I guess the remaining point is to just question, is any society or societies healthy when we don't have boundaries? No boundaries? This is what I'm hearing now. Let us love, be love. Well, if you are a 90-year-old person loving a 10-year-old person, this is not healthy love. So no boundaries? I think our ancestors and people like the elder who just put in the chat, Elder Bernie, know that we have to have boundaries, healthy boundaries, because that sustains our civilizations. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Portia. Let's get to Brother Sokiri. Brother Ifo, your hand is up. Please go ahead, Brother Ifo.
Yeah, my apologies for being late. Although I can blame the inviter for that because I had the wrong code. But I think what is being shared here is fundamental. You know, the ideas of unity, but also the clarity about who are we choosing to unify with. Because I think sometimes people get distracted by power and don't pay attention to whether that power is a power that is aligned to destroy us or a power that is aligned to nurture us. And when folks, to give the South African example, when folks decide to unite with folks who are clearly our enemies, it shows the lack of understanding. We also see that in the West African context of folks trying to figure out how best the IMF and the World Bank and the CIA can help us. And then also coming back to the importance of culture. I think too many Africans don't actually know their culture. They know the culture of the colonizers, whether that be the colonizers from the European world or the colonizers from the Arab world. And then they want to treat those cultures as theirs. And I find some of the folks who are not looking at their theology or their spiritual path as a liberating one, but one as a colonial restrictive one, tend to be ones who they're not on the payroll of our enemies, but they work overtime for them. And so I'm always leery of those who have more allegiance to anything but the ways our ancestors moved with wisdom. That's why I really love the ideas of Sankofa, of going back and bringing it forward. And also this nuance here that you shared about the difference between cohesion and coercion. Yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Info. Thank you very much. Sorry for the inconvenience that arose. At this particular moment, I'll request any member want to speak to please raise your hand so that I can call you. Or any member want to share their comment, please let me know. So, Brother Coco.
Thank you. And greetings to my brother Ifo and all of you here. Sister Portia, I think you asked the question about why does Africa have to unite before, and we never really answered that, nor did we have an opportunity to discuss it, because usually that's discussed on Saturday. But I would like to take that again. But before that, what Dr. Nkume is telling us here is that there are formal and informal rules and regulations of uniting the people, uniting the nation. The formal will, of course, be the usual rules, the laws, which I think he talked about in the previous paragraphs. But in this case, he's not talking about just the formal control. He's talking about the informal controls. And he references a sermon in church, which is a moral persuasion. And then there will be a trade union pressure. That's a group solidarity in a way. And then there is Can I continue? Do you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead, Brother Coco. Sorry, my
right.
son decided to unmute myself.
That's fine. Thank you. He is a good one. He needs to unmute that. So there are sneers, there are snaps, and other social cues. And those, again, are informal. But they all still shape people's behavior strongly. So I think, but if we talks about the IMF and the World Bank, with the IMF and the World Bank, what we all have to remember is that they have been appointed the police of the world when it comes to economic matters now. They can come into your country and tell you whether you are managing the economy well or not managing the economy well. And most of those policies they bring are Western capitalist policies, which most of the time they don't care about your people. Or if they do, they make sure that you stretch yourself so bad that you collapse. Hence, you become an easy picking for the Western corporations, multinational corporations. So let's leave it at that. And then let me try to answer Sister Portia. For reasons such as this of the IMF, the reasons such as this singling us out for special treatment and sowing distrust amongst ourselves and building barriers based on language, based on fallacy of different cultures or fallacy of different countries, which never existed. We have to unite Africa. The Berlin Conference came in and drew lines on the ground and left those partitions, which are the construct of a white man on our land. And right now, my people in Lesotho, a small piece of land, which is carved up within South Africa, they cannot go to South Africa and work freely They have to get work permits to go work in South Africa. All right. They are illegal immigrants in South Africa. But if I start to trace my roots right now, you'll find that my people come somewhere closer to Botswana or somewhere around northern part of South Africa. And if we start to disentangle the Sotho language, we find that it's made up of largely the Setswana, which you find in Botswana and in northern parts of South Africa, but it's also largely made up of the Zulu language, which is found in eastern part of South Africa. So are you going to tell me that I should stay where I am in Lesotho and not try to make sure my people can move freely within the land which belongs to our forefathers? The Zulu people who left Zululand at that time, they have a right to go work in South Africa or do anything in South Africa where they belong. The same as the Ndebele people who left South Africa and went all the way in Zimbabwe, or those Dongonis who went all the way into Tanzania. Who's going to tell them that there is now a border, you cannot migrate anymore back south to where you came from? It's the same thing if you start to trace all the people within Africa. Is that there's that element which is cultural, but besides that cultural, they are playing us against each other. China is helping with the Tazara Railway, which is connecting Zambia to the coast in Tanzania. The United States and EU are helping Angola and Congo and Zambia to take their minerals in their raw form, again, take them out to Angola, through the Lobito corridor, which they are creating. But if the African people could come together, all of those projects they could build themselves. I cannot see why they should not be building those projects themselves. Now, let's talk about DRC and Rwanda. These are the same people. These are the same people, but somebody said to them, oh, you are the headers, you are the farmers, you don't belong here, you belong there. But if we decide there is just one country, why will Kagame want to invade Congo if he can get access to Congo? And if the Congolese can also get access to Kigali for all their banking, finance, and everything that they need. So there are lots and lots of signages that we can find ourselves by uniting. And there is a biggest tool of imperialism which is being used now amongst the Africans, which is called the African Continental Free Trade Area, because that is being done by the Western companies, or those are the ones who are going to benefit more than the Africans, because the Africans don't have a say in that. They don't have a stake in that. Most of the Africans are there poor, nothing, they don't know what is happening. But the Africans have to have their say in their country, in their whole country. By a country, I mean the whole breadth and length of Africa, all the way from Mozambique or Madagascar to Mauritania, as Robert Subuku said. So I hope I am clear about this. It's not that I'm saying people have to feel oppressed, but I'm just showing you that there are lots of things that have been imposed on the Africans, and we had to go ahead of those because of some colonial links, some colonial heritage, or some colonial law, which has been so oppressive on us. For instance, we did not intervene in Rwanda in 1994 because they decided they're going to respect the borders and non-intervention in other people's affairs, which is not African. That is not an African way of doing things. I cannot leave my neighbor to kill his wife while I'm here. I cannot leave my neighbors to fight, or my neighbor's house to burn down while I'm here and I can help. That is not the African way of doing things. So let me stop there, but I'm happy to be challenged. I'm happy for questions or comments. Thank you.
No, thank you. Thank you very much, Brother Coco. Brother Sokiri hasn't spoken, and Sister Myra. Let me know if any of you will want to share your thoughts in regards to this paragraph we have been reading. So Kiri or Sister Mera and also Sawindo didn't speak. Any of you? Then welcome, Sister Ida. I know you've come late, but feel most welcome. Thank you. So let me get from Sister Mera, Brother Sokiri or Sawindo if you want to contribute to the text before I go back to Sister Tapua. Any member? Okay. Silence means none. Sister Tapua, you can go ahead.
Thank you very much. I think I'm going to respond in two ways. Part of my response is to do with what I put up in the chat on the question of whether Africa was united before or not. And my position is, besides Africa being united because we are on one landmass, and considering what my brother Coco has said, the big question, which other states in the world are united today that were united before? Because that question in itself seems to question whether we should be united or not. And we're going to be united because it's functional. It makes sense. We are one people and we've got all the reasons that have been provided. The United Kingdom has not always been united. Otherwise, they wouldn't be called united. All these other countries, China and everybody else who's forming these big countries, were not always united. And I think for me, it's a distraction. It's getting us from where we should be, because it makes sense for us to be one people, as has been proven by my brother when he raised all those other points. The next point that I want to discuss is on looking at what Nkrumah is saying here. If we're going to think of a united, liberated Africa, what laws do we need to put in place to make sure that all the countries of this beautiful country that we're dreaming of is together and united? But for me, it's the tools that we're going to use, the subtle tools that we're going to use to ensure that even those people or those countries or those organizations within Africa that feel that they shouldn't unite, we need to find ways. In other words, we're going to use what we've been told here as a counter to those organizations and people who think that we shouldn't be united as a continent. And I'm thinking of the current example of the conflict between Zimbabweans and South Africans, or Southern Africans and South Africa. There should be other ways that we can use besides the laws that have been put in place in South Africa. There should be other ways that we can use to, in quotation marks, just like in the speech, in the text that Nkrumah has written, coercion in quotation marks, to use the subtle ways that could in some ways be insidious, but towards our goal. Because we've got people like Malema, who is facing a whole torrent of abuse from his own people. This week, I was watching the conflict that arose outside hospitals because some citizens have taken it upon themselves to stand by the hospital gate and screen people. And then you have people who came in, I think it was a Nigerian group and so on, who are legally in the country, who hold the equivalent of green cards in the country, But because they're not South African, and I'm thinking there should be other ways of making sure that those amongst us who might not agree, we can use and we can discuss ways that help them to understand where we're going, ways that make them see that whatever they're doing, if it is countered against them, it will not make sense. Because a lot, like my brother has said, a lot of it has to do with the insular situation that the Boers put on South Africans who did not understand what was happening anywhere else in Africa. And therefore, when they got their independence, the other parts of Africa didn't matter. It was themselves who mattered. So I think we need to, my point is, let's look at this passage and look at how it can enhance our own struggle towards the unification of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you, Sister Tapua. Let me check again on my list. Sister Ida, you come now. Would you wish to share something with us? And we also have Brother Joseph who might be joining us for the first time. Any of you would like to say something?
Sorry, did you call my name?
Yes, I called your name, Sister Ida.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry, my phone doesn't seem to be very high. I can only greet you all because I haven't read the passage, but I've been listening with interest with what Brother Coco and Sister Chisoma, oh, was it Sister Tapoa said? Yes. So I could just greet you and say I will rewatch. Sorry, I had to be out today. So thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Sister Ida. Brother Joseph? Brother Joseph, would you like to say something?
Greetings, everybody. Because I've just come for the first time, I would wish to reserve my comments for the next class. However, it's my pleasure to say that the call for a united Africa is a very noble idea. Thank you.
Thank you. We are having 13 minutes to go. And I know members might come in, but there are a few things that I like to point out. When you look at the second paragraph, they say that coercion could unfortunately be rather painful, but it is signally effective in ensuring that individual behavior does not become dangerously irresponsible. The individual is not an anarchic unit. Anybody who might want to share more on that text? What do you think in that text? Or what is the message in that text? I'm really interested to get more thoughts on that text. Anybody? Yeah, Brother Ifo, let's go ahead.
Yeah, there's a famous quote that with freedom comes responsibility. And I think that responsibility is what is being talked at the bottom part about we do not live in isolation. And if we want to talk about the spirit of and the philosophy of Ubuntu, it is the understanding that we are interconnected. And so I think they say that we have a moral responsibility to be intolerant of the intolerant, because the intolerant want to destroy society. So if we have a well in your village and somebody says, you know what, I need to organize and get some poison and pour it down this well, and that well is your only source of income, then you shouldn't just say, hey, I respect your freedom, go ahead and do that. You need to sometimes forcefully stop them. Right. And I think that is the strange thing about the things that we have borrowed from the West. because when the Western and the Arab folks were imposing their will on us, they didn't ask us. In most cases, you see how violently they've killed Lumumba. They've basically come at war. But then when we talk about wanting to do things in a respectful way and respecting of our ancestors and respecting the fact that we consider ourselves interconnected and family, then they come at us. And some of our kinfolk also join that fight willingly. So I'm not interested in uniting with any African that doesn't actually love themselves to the point where they want to join our enemies to arrange to kill us. I will unite with those who want to create a better world and those who actually love themselves. I'm open to helping someone along if they want to find their path towards love in Africa, but I'm not interested in trying to babysit the intolerant, because I think that's usually where we end up with poison in our wells. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Brother Uso.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. As we are talking, in fact, you will find that the gist of all that we are saying comes to dwell on how Africa will define our system. Like our brother just said, that everything have been imposed on us. The difference between Africa and the rest of the world is that we don't define things for ourselves. What is freedom in Africa? I don't think what let me use the word white man see as freedom coming from a context of individualism would be the same as somebody coming from a world of a communitarian society whereby we share things in common. I don't think freedom will be the same. But everything, every concept has been done for us. You go to China, Asia, China, India, Japan, they have a different approach to economics. On the open, they will pretend like we follow capitalism, but they have a local definition of what economy is, what they want to do. You see, so the problem, I always say that much of the problem we're facing also comes from us, because we are not, with all our learning and erudition, we are not ready to actually say that let's take our world in our hands, even rewrite textbooks in the way that what we want our children to learn. If we want to talk about management, how do an African management coming from a context where we work together be defined that way? We are not doing that for Europeans. We are doing that for ourselves. And this is where I feel that so long as everything we are being spoon-fed from somewhere, whether east or west, it will be a big problem for us, and we will continue to linger as we are in a problem now with all the confusion of politics and almost everything, you see. So let's start from somewhere. Let's start from somewhere. In fact, on my side, we have started a project, though it is in the spiritual side that we are trying to look at. But I feel like there should also, people should start from the political side on Afrocentric way of looking at the world. And when we come in that way, we are able to tell them that, look, we are grown and we have found our way back. So this is how we see the world, and this is how we see democracy. This is how we see freedom. This is how we see politics. I believe that we can transform Africa that way, but not the way things are at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you. We are left with the 6 minutes. Sister Tapua.
Thank you. Thank you, Brother Wusu. You said exactly what I'd intended to say when I raised my hand. Because in an African context, we don't look at the individual. The individual does not live for their own sake. We are people that value Ubuntu. We can only see our strength in how we see others. In other words, we are only as good as everyone, as the people around us. We complement each other. So when we're talking of coercion, for example, coercion, we are saying we have systems in place in Africa that, for example, the explorers marveled at when they came to Africa and found no prisons or prisoners in the way they understood prison. We had ways of dealing with murder. In other words, we had the subtle and insidious ways of making sure that if you kill someone, it's not just a matter of you going to prison or paying a fine. It's a spiritual thing. We've got so many things that we couch around spirituality, and that a human being is more than just flesh and blood. You can't do that to someone else. Because this is more than what you see. The person is more than who you see. So when we're looking at that passage there, the last paragraph, the individual is not an archaic unit. He lives in orderly surroundings. In other words, the individual does not exist outside his surroundings. And it is the orderly surroundings that help him to be who they're meant to be. Because the last section there, and achieving these orderly surroundings calls for methods both explicit and subtle. And for me, that sums it all up. If we are able to always focus on Ubuntu and focus on us understanding ourselves, like my brother Benny has said, then we're home and dry. We don't accept democracy as it is, because democracy says, I'm standing up for myself, I'm standing up for people like me. But Ubuntu says everybody matters. The young, the old, the weak, the educated, the uneducated. We're all in this together. And it is the order of our surroundings that make us who we are. Not sniffing at people because I've made $1 million, I'm of this class, and therefore all other classes don't matter. I think this is what I've read from what we got here. Going back to our ways. Sankoffering. Thank you.
Thank you. Sister Portia coming. We are left with 3 minutes.
Thank you. I want to thank King Brother Coco, and I want to thank Queen Sister Tapua, and also the elder who spoke, and then I believe also it was the brother. I think it was King Brother Owusu. I stated earlier the emphasis on returning to Akibalan, our civilizations. And then I mentioned about what the elder Bernie had mentioned. So what I have heard in the people who have thanked, I don't hear any disagreement with that. I hear it as an echoing. When I am questioning concept of unity, it is not to say we are not toward the sustainability of our communities. No, it is questioning this definition. How do we define unity? And the King Brother Owusu said it very well. Someone come into the village. One, they haven't even gotten permission. They just have that arrogance to come and say they know more than the community. Then they want to pour something dangerous into the well. But now in the community, we don't object because that is freedom of expression. So the elder has said it very well, Elder Bernie in the chat. We must question the definitions of the words that we are using, particularly in the oppressive English language. I yield.
Thank you so much. We actually come to an end of the session today. And thanks for all those who made the report. Maybe I missed able to do so. I also appreciate you for listening and for your time. We will continue the reading some next week.
Can't hear you, brother.
Yeah, we can hear.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Sorry for that. I'm saying thanks for all those who are able to share their thoughts. And to those who have listened to us, also we appreciate you. Those who have been with us for this time. We have come to an end of our session today. We don't end it, we just pause it. So we will continue from there. As you see, we've been dealing a lot with the instruments of coercion in our society. And maybe there's a reason why Nkrumah is bringing this and trying to unfold slowly as we move along. So let's meet next Thursday. This Saturday, we are looking at economic self-reliance. And I think tomorrow, Brother Satish will be having some conference on, I think, the indemnity in Haiti. So we'll also be looking forward to those who might be able to attend, might attend that tomorrow. But yes, thank you so much. So let's look forward to our Saturday session on economic self-reliance and also on our Thursday as we continue with this conversation. Brother Coco, do you have something to say?
I just wanted to say thank you for this today. It probably moved a bit from what it was meant to, but it's still helpful. And I think that's how the African conversations are like. But again, I would like to thank my brother Ousu, but also highlight that the education we got is neo-colonial. But how can we make it work for us? We need to start thinking about how to make it work for us, because right now it's working for someone else, not us. Not us. All our educated people are following the colonial master or the former colonial masters, what they want. What we want as Africans. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brother Coco. So yes, let's continue the conversation.